Welcome to another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love, hosted by Richard Osler. Our guest on today's podcast is the Sweeten family. Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Sweeten. And we have Lance and Tiffany, who are the parents of this family, married together. How many years have you been married?
It'll be 25 in May.
That's good. I'm impressed one of you knew that off the top of your head, because I sometimes forget that number.
Yes.
And my wife and I are about in that range. And we also have your oldest daughter here, Gwen.
Hello.
I'm glad you're here, Gwen.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
The Sweetens have 4 children. Gwen is their oldest daughter. Gwen is transgender.
Yep.
And we will talk about your story, being a transgender woman, growing up in an LDS home. And that's really the focus of the podcast, is this journey of this family's journey, having a transgender child and keeping the family circle together. And Lance offered a wonderful prayer before we started, and we prayed that our listeners would feel the Spirit. This is a complicated topic, and you have all been walking complicated road. But as I've gotten to know your family and have sensed your good spirit and love, you've done a great job of navigating this space and keeping the family circle together. And I think this will be helpful for other local leaders, transgender people, and parents that have a LGBTQ, and in this case, particular transgender child. So the second part of the podcast, after the family story, is the Sweetens have done a great job of connecting with their bishop and stake in Davis County. And their stake president bishop have done a lot of work trying to understand this space. And the Sweetens have worked hand in hand with them to develop and have a communication about how to minister, support LGBTQ people. And that's been a beautiful part of your family story. And I think if you're a local leader, the second part of this podcast, I think, will be very helpful, because I think a lot of local leaders are looking for how to do this. And I think what you're doing is wonderful, Lance and Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's me. I don't like to talk too much, but I guess a little bit of an introduction. So Lance and Tiffany, talk about how you met, where you grew up, some of your interests, and just introduce yourselves to our listeners.
Okay. I was born in Bountiful and pretty much grew up about 5 miles away from where I was born. I never lived outside of Davis County. And same with Lance. He grew up mostly in the Bountiful area, but he was born in Malad, Idaho, and kind of moved around. But the funny thing is we both kind of ended up in the same area. We didn't know that when I was in kindergarten at Stoker, he was in 4th grade in Stoker.
Wow.
And then Stoker closed down, and we ended up in different elementary schools. But ultimately, we ended up living in the same stake, just in different wards. And when I had graduated from high school, he was going to the singles ward that I wanted to go to. I just hadn't gone to yet. So, and it's really interesting because when we first met, I was working it's not around anymore. It is in Heber, but it's called King's, just King's.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a little, kind of like a Big Lots or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a cashier there, and he came in with one of his buddies from work, and I was cashiering, and I like to say I was cashiering, and he checked me out.
Yeah,
I checked him out. He checked me out.
That day I was coming in, we were looking for some walkie-talkie headphones, and so that was the closest store. So I walked in, and she was on the card aisle, and I remember specifically because when I walked in, she stood up, and I saw her, made eye contact with her, and I instantly knew that I was going to marry her.
Wow. How old were you, Lance?
I was 22.
Okay.
And just been back
and
from a
she's
mission.
18, because I'm still doing the math on
She
4th
was
grade.
17.
Huh?
I'm doing the math on 4th grade
Yeah.
to kindergarten. And unless you somehow close that gap, she's 4 years younger than you.
No,
Yes.
she was 17.
5.
She was 17.
I was still 17 when we met.
But I knew I was going to marry her. I just had to figure out who she was and how I was going to convince her of that. So I ended up just asking her out, and she said yes. So
Yeah, and he was so nervous when he did it. He started walking out, and I'm like, but what's your name? And he came back and said his name. I'm like, do you want my phone number?
So you were open to this.
Yeah, I know. I had just gotten on someone that I worked with for agreeing to go out with a guy that they had just met at work, and I did the same thing. But he ended up calling me the next day, and we talked for like 4 hours on the phone and realized we had such a similar background, and both of our dads were truck drivers, which is a unique way of growing up.
Yeah.
And so we knew a lot of the lingo that truck drivers use, and we both grew up in Bountiful and had a lot of the same similar ways of being raised by the mom who ruled the roost, and dad showed up for a couple days and kind of messed things up a little bit.
Us dads do that.
Yeah. What's interesting about that story is the time goes on, we get to figuring out that she was on a 10-minute breaking somebody else that day, and she was only in the store upstairs for 10 minutes when I walked in and met her. So if it would have been 10 minutes before or after, I never would have met her.
Wow. As you well know, it seems like God has obviously had a hand bringing you two together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when we visited before the podcast, I just sense your really wonderful, healthy marriage based on trust and communication. And so how long from when you met in that store, King's, until you were married? Does anybody know the timeline?
It was almost a year. I had just graduated from high school.
Okay, so you did graduate from high school.
I
and
did.
You served in Mission Lance?
Yes, I served in Independence, Missouri.
That was what was funny is I was wearing a CTR ring, so he knew that I was LDS, but I didn't know anything about him. He knew my name. I had a name tag on. And so when he called me, I knew he was 22, so I thought, I kind of want to find out what his background was. Do I want to continue this, And so I had said, so what have you been doing the last couple years? That's a strange question, but then
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's right to the point.
Yeah. And so he had said how he went on a mission to Independence, Missouri, and so it was nice to know that he was LDS too. It didn't really matter to go out or anything, but I was just going out with some strange guy, so it was kind of nice to know that. So,
well, that's a great story and just a love story, so that's fun. Tiffany, introduce your family to our listeners, your kids, how old they are, their gender.
Okay, so we have Gwendolyn, Anne, and Anne is actually my middle name, so when she changed her name, she took my middle name, which I thought was really, really sweet.
I'm very glad I did. I think it's a pretty good middle name, plus Gwendolyn and Sweeten are pretty long, so it kept my name fitting on forms.
And
Yes.
Gwen, does Anne have an E or no E's?
Just A-N-N, no
Okay.
E-S.
And then we have Megan, and she is 19. And then I have Amy, who is 15 and in high school. And then I have our youngest, Matthew, who is 12.
Okay.
And they're all very unique in their own special way, but very, very loving and very supportive of Gwen.
So you have 3 daughters and 1 son, 4
Yep.
kids. You're busy.
Yes, and work full time, and we manage a 32-unit apartment complex. So
Wow.
we're very busy, but that's how we roll.
Tell us about Gwen. Tiffany, your thoughts about Gwen?
Well, Gwen growing up just made me look like a really good mom because she taught herself how to read about 4 years old. She has an intellect that's far beyond anything I've ever seen. She just did very, very well in school. Kind of even knew more than teachers did a lot of the time. But, she was just the child that I knew would always do well in school and never really caused any problems with us. And just, starting 7th grade, it was constant 4.0, but she was just kind of an easy kid, just not really stressful.
Quiet kid that I guess I kept my head down a lot in books as well.
Yeah.
We did a lot of reading, and I think that probably helped because you and me read a lot
Yeah.
when I was younger.
Yeah.
She also was the family tech support.
Yes.
Was the most tech savvy, and
Are you a Mac family or a PC family?
we're divided.
Divided family.
Divided.
Okay.
Very mixed.
Yeah, it's mixed, but very tech savvy, and was my own personal technical support.
Yeah.
Us dads sometimes turn to our kids, Gwen, for technical
Yeah.
support.
Yeah, I'm used to it by now.
By high school, we definitely could not help her with her homework, but she didn't really need us too much. So
We required her to teach and all the rest of the kids math and everything because we couldn't figure it all out.
yeah.
Tell us more of Gwen growing up, and then we'll have Gwen tell more of her story.
I think as far as that goes, what kind of surprised us is when she was growing up, because she was kind of so easy and not really any kind of, there was no real struggle with raising her and stuff. When she hit I'd say about 12 years old, things started to change a little bit, and she kind of went to a dark place. And we just didn't know what was going on at all. We just saw this teenager, preteen, getting an attitude and what's wrong with you and why are you so angry, and grades we noticed started slipping a little bit, which was not anything we had ever dealt with before. But we just kind of knew something wasn't going right. Something was very wrong, and something that she was holding in, and we didn't know what it was. And it was just creating a lot of tension, I think.
There was a lot of emotional issues that we were experiencing, and that we noticed that Gwen was experiencing, and we couldn't help her understand really what it was. And she was more pulling away from us and not so openly talking to us. So as parents, your mind's racing trying to find out.
Did you think that was typical teenager, or did you realize that this was different?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because
it's
our first kid. So some of it we thought was just the age. Then as the time went on, I think we noticed there were some differences. And at that point we were like, yeah, I think we need to do something to help her and do something to figure out us. And we were at odds a lot as parents and Gwen. And so we just wanted to figure out what we could do to fix that.
Gwen, will you tell a little bit about what was going on?
Yeah. I would say, like what you said, around 12. Back then, I couldn't necessarily put a word to it, but I knew I was struggling with something with my identity, sexuality, and such. But you'd be surprised how much the world's changed, especially the internet, in the last 10 years. What kind of resources are available to you? What kind of perspective most people give. Back then, it's, more like the jokes you see in media and such. And I knew that I didn't really feel comfortable with my body, and I kind of was dealing with that for a few years before I could even had heard of the idea of being transgender, and I really kind of felt almost out of myself, unable to really kind of engage with anything. Through school, I guess I really didn't want to be at school. I didn't really want to be around anyone. So that easily affected me early on. Luckily, I would say around when I was 14, and I was able to kind of understand it a little bit more. And also just getting to have good friends around that time has helped me as well. And even then, by the time I knew, being in a Mormon family, I didn't know if that was going to be okay, if that was even going to work out. So it was, a few years of just holding it in as well, trying to juggle everything growing up in the church, especially going through the church, taking a lot of patriarchal roles, like being the priesthood leaders. But I kind of got myself lost in all of that and all of my internal feelings, to where I couldn't really be myself and also relate with my family. It really was a strain on our whole family's relationship.
So if I kind of sense you as parents knew something was going on ages 14 to 16, 12 to 16. And
yeah.
And Gwen's kind of, and I would guess no parent really has, I wouldn't know what to do in this situation. I've never had a elders quorum lesson that would prepare me for the road you're on.
Yeah, there was no manual or roadmap for this.
you're navigating this on your own with Heavenly Father's help.
Right. Because there wasn't any signs that we ever would have thought transgender. I didn't even really know what it was. And so when she told us, I kind of was like forcing her to tell me what was wrong. I'm like, what is going on with you? And we had gone to some counseling, and it was more like thinking it was a behavioral thing, and ways that we can, we learned the love and logic and try to just work through that. And that actually did help us a lot. But,
Good.
But we just knew there was something that she wasn't saying, something she was holding back. And I remember just tell me. And it was the two of us at home, and she said, she finally was willing to tell me what was going on. And it took a while to get it out of her. And I don't know if I did it the right way or not.
It's okay.
Yeah, we basically, we were going over trying to ask, our, parents ask a lot of the first things that'll come to their mind, like, have you gotten somebody pregnant? Are you pregnant? Are you gay or something like that? And eventually it just kind of came out as like, I'm a girl. Like it didn't really make sense. I'd say especially for the first couple of weeks, it was kind of just, it didn't make much sense. And there wasn't really, we didn't go too much.
How did you feel, Gwen, just saying that out loud to your parents? That was scary.
I was terrified. It was pretty scary. I just kind of assumed that, I don't know, I'd grow up, turn 18, move out. Did find out sometime later. But
so your plan kind of between when you realized you're trans at age 14 roughly, and when you came out to your parents, you've got these 2 years, and I'm not sure I'm getting it correct, where you're kind of closeted and you're thinking, this is my path. Mm-hmm. And one of my paths is to stay closeted, and then at 18, just kind of leave.
Yeah, that was pretty much my plan. Luckily, that didn't go right. I'm glad that I did come out to my parents when I did.
Why? Why are you glad you came out to your parents?
I feel like it's hard to say how they would have reacted or how it would have been if I had gone a couple years without saying anything. But I feel like everything that's happened since then, the people that I was able to meet in the Pride Center, when I did attend the youth groups there, the people that my parents were able to meet as well, I feel like it's almost serendipitous. It's a really good time that everything happened after that.
So Lance, your perspective on this? I don't know if you heard it first from your wife.
I
or heard it from Gwen.
I heard it from my wife.
Yeah. After she told me, I ran in the other room because I do remember the whole time she was talking. I just remember saying a little prayer in the back of my mind. Just don't overreact. Just, make
quick
sure.
Prayer.
Yeah, quick prayer. Just not overreacting. And I do remember just saying, okay, like I had no idea what that meant for the future at all. I just remember giving her a hug and telling her that we were there for her, but panicking inside.
It's okay.
And I did run in the other room and called Lance really quick to get it out.
Yeah, she called me and she was having a really hard time trying to explain it, and I was at work, and it just didn't quite hit, but I understood what area it was, involving. So that was a long rest of my day at work. But when I came home, we were able to talk, and it was just something that we had just never come across, never thought about. And so it just took us a little bit off guard. But I definitely relied on Tiffany because she is more of the sounding board in our relationship when it comes to spiritual things, in the sense of she has a sense about her that it's just remarkable, and I followed her lead. So this was an area, she's the mother, and I know there's a lot put on the patriarchal or the father, but a mother's intuition and a mother's love is stronger than anything that we have as fathers. And so I followed her lead, and that's where we are.
That's beautiful. This is a beautiful family moment, a very difficult, complicated situation.
Yeah, it was. We were just scared.
Why were you scared?
Because I didn't know, honestly, that first, your first reaction as a mother, you think, okay, these are my children. This is how they're going to grow up. And I'm going to have, 14 grandchildren or whatever it is. And, growing up, I assumed, she'd go on a mission, get married in the temple, I teased 3.5 grandchildren. And I just saw that future go away. And I didn't know what the future meant for her. I was just scared. I was truly scared. Like, what does this mean for her? How will people treat her? And her health, everything like that. And I just was so scared because I didn't know anything. I thought for a little while that she was gay. And I had asked her several times, just, you can tell me you're gay. And she kept saying, no, I'm not, And so when she came out, I just truly didn't even understand it at all. And so I was just scared. I was just the unknown, because moms want to know what is in the future.
Yeah.
And that's where it just stopped right there. And I didn't know what the future was going to be for her.
Some parents might think that this is just a phase, that I've got a transgender child and this will just pass. And if this hasn't passed.
Yeah, because at
you
first
have a transgender child, and help other parents, or Gwen, just, why this isn't just a phase.
Well, and I did think that at first. I thought maybe it was the friends she was seeing. Maybe it was something she saw on the internet. Because it was so far out of the blue. It was just after she got her eagle, and went to church every week. But, we could tell there were struggles. But so I thought it was a phase, or it was something we could talk her out of, or something like that. Yeah. And it was through the education I had and people I would meet dealing with the same issue, and other transgender women who really helped me understand what it was to be transgender.
And we want people to know too, is that's an honest response. I mean, that's an honest reaction. I mean, it's not meant to be mean or in any way, but that is just a natural reaction. And I remember when we first talked about it, I had friends that I knew of and friends growing up that were gay. So that was nothing that was an issue for me. It was realizing, what does this mean for my child? My first real priority was the safety and well-being of my kid, because I didn't know how society will accept her, take her, and understand this. And so my fear was for her safety. And we kind of revolved around everything to make her safe.
That's great.
And so that was, but people, it's an honest response. I mean, you can't sugarcoat it. I mean, you have to go through and experience each phase in its entirety, just so you can learn and grow. And education was the big one, is getting educated. I went with, when Gwen wanted to go down to the Pride Center in Salt Lake, she needed me to take her, and I wasn't going to just go drop my child off and leave. I wanted to know more about it. So I remember when we went in, and she went into one of the groups, and I asked one of the counselors there, I just said, can I just sit and talk to you? And she said, yeah, absolutely. Well, the whole time for the hour that Gwen was in the group, I just sat and talked to this counselor at Pride. And I just said, I'm going to say some things that are not going to be right, but I just need somebody to answer me honestly and tell me and give me some direction. And that was one of the most wonderful discussions I've ever had with anybody, because it put me in perspective. It put everything in perspective. And it gave me a direction to move forward, and how to move forward, and how and what to look for.
Do you remember one or two things that counselor taught you'd pass on to other parents, or just...
One of the things, the biggest one was just loving. Just no matter what you do, love, and not being ashamed. This counselor was not from here, but she moved back here. And the one thing that she said that she noticed in our community here in Salt Lake is parents will drive up and in front of the Pride Center, and the kid will get out of the car and close the door, and then the parents take off, and they're ashamed. And she said, "You are the first dad that has ever come in with their child and wanting to know what's going on." She said, "You're really one in a million." She goes, "Moms, there are a few moms." She goes, "But you're the only dad I've ever had this discussion with." And that broke my heart, because if a parent can't support their child and go in and have that kind of conversation, how do they ever expect their child to be successful and grow and maintain a relationship? And so that was really, for me, that was the first point for me. I realized I need to educate myself, period, and move forward that way.
Well, that put some tears in my eyes and maybe some of our listeners. Gwen, talk about just why this isn't a phase.
Well, I mean, we made it this far. It's been a while, but back then I honestly would have preferred if it was a phase. It would have made it a bit easier for me, for sure. But something that I, especially when you're trans, when you change your name, people will ask you, where did you come up with the idea for changing your name? I guess in my case, it's not necessarily just the most obvious. I genuinely just, whenever I would imagine myself as an adult when I was a small child, 12 to around that age, I wouldn't necessarily see what you would imagine, just a typical man. I would see a woman. I imagine I could see Gwendolyn. I could see myself there. And I just it was something that just came to me one day, and it stuck. I've never, it's never not been my future. And I guess we're here, and I'm pretty much the woman I saw then.
How's your emotional health now compared to when you were closeted?
I would say, while it might not be the best right now, like it might not be 100% right now.
Same.
It's definitely, nobody's is. But I would say it's remarkably better than when I was a kid. There were so many days I would just get home from school and I would just crawl in bed and hide from the world because I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I just didn't feel like I fit in my body, and I couldn't, I feel like that was a bit of time where I felt like I didn't really have as many friends. I didn't really relate with anyone. It might have helped. I had, if before then, a couple of close friends that I had moved, so I don't think that helped as well. But luckily, at this point, I feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm supported by all my friends and family, and I don't know. I feel like even though my mental health might be just average now, it's come a long ways.
That's great. Thoughts on if other parents are listening that have a transgender child and are kind of new to the road, maybe back when you were 16 and first coming out, or 17, what advice would you give to parents?
I would say to parents, and I guess it could also be to any of the youth out there as well, that for my struggle and anyone else's, I realized, or at least started realizing, that I was trans long before my parents knew, long before I had come out to them. And it can be really hard to be, if you're on a different page, you're on a page that feels like it's on the back of the book and they're just starting, but eventually they'll catch up. And I don't think my parents are necessarily the most remarkable, abnormal people, but they're able to catch up. And I feel like we're on the same page now. So they might start out, it might feel like they're so far behind. And it's also something it's important to remember for your child is that if they've gotten to the point where they have come out to you, they've been on this road a lot longer than you have, and they have been on this journey and questioning themselves a bit more. So even though it might be shocking and it might be tough, I guess my recommendation is to realize that you are the parent, you're the grown up, so you're the one that should be at least a little more prepared. But it's not necessarily the most easy to be.
Other thoughts on this subject, Lance or Tiffany?
Well, speaking of how she knew a lot longer, a lot before we did, she had gotten educated and knew a lot about being transgender, where when she told us, I think she kind of a little bit expected us to be where she was and have the same feelings she did. And so we did have quite a few arguments about what was okay and what was not okay, just because she had already, educated herself and looked up a lot of things and knew other people and situations. So it took us a while to kind of get where she was, because she had already done all that research and we hadn't done any. So it was really nice. My education, like Lance had kind of at the Pride Center, was Lance found out about being a mama dragon. And that's where it really helped me, is finding other mothers that had been through that. And but the first thing we ever did was we met with a couple who had a daughter, which is funny because it's about where we are now. We were at the time only just a few months in, but they were about where we are now, about 6 years or so into it. And we were just, so upset and didn't know what to do, and we were crying, and they just kind of kept looking at us, smiling, and just seemed so calm, and it kind of made me mad. Like, what is going on? And they just kept saying to us, it's gonna be okay. And at the time, I'm like, you just don't know. Like, your situation's so much easier than ours. But as time has gone by, that's something that really resonated with me and I would tell other parents who just found out about their child, whether they're gay, transgender, or whatever it is, it's going to be okay. As long as you're strong in your family and you hold it together, and even if you have bad times, because you will, there's nothing to stop that. Just knowing it will be okay as long as you stick together and you love each other.
Once your daughter came out as trans, then some of the transition starts, like, please call me she and her and a name. Did that happen week 1?
No.
6 weeks later? And
I think in her mind, I think she would have liked that, but we, like I said, we didn't know anything. And so the thought of all that was so foreign to us that it was like, are you kidding me? I've called you this your whole life and all that. And it was very, very difficult at first to do that. And we messed up a lot. And we hadn't really forced anyone in our family to hold them to that either. And we could tell that it was really hurting her. It just kind of broke her apart every time we wouldn't use the right pronoun and the right name. And so I remember Lance and I went on a drive, just the two of us. And we had told each other we have got to try. And we have got to just do it. And there's no ease into it.
Pronouns are not, changing pronouns is not easy. It requires rewiring your brain.
It really does.
It really does. And, but it's something you have to make a conscious effort to do. And you will mess up and you will make mistakes. And the one thing we noticed is the best thing you can do is to recognize it, like apologize, and move on. Correct it and move on. Don't dwell on it. Don't make it the elephant in the room every time. Just move on. And I think, we were coming to that point where we were trying to, and we talked as a family. And what is very interesting when you think, how am I going to explain this to my 7-year-old? And I went outside and we were mowing the lawn, and I explained to my 7-year-old, explained everything, and because he's really wondering and trying to figure out what was going on, and so I just explained it to him at 7 years old and what we were going to do, and we're going to call her Gwen, and we're going to say she and her. And we finally got to the point where I asked him if he understood, and he said, well, if that's what she wants. And he, to this day, has held every one of us to that. He has never messed up to this day. And he has called out many people in the family when they make an error. He'll correct them, but, from the mouths of babes, he has been our absolutely shining example of how to properly use the pronouns.
If that's what she wants.
If that's what she wants.
If that what makes her happy.
That's what makes her happy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky that he has been such a good, he has been so good about it in our family and has been really good about correcting people, where especially early on, it is kind of scary to correct people on that. And it can be really awkward doing that yourself. And it's nice when it's your little brother. He's the youngest in the family, and he's right on it.
He's a shining
Yeah.
example, so he's good.
And luckily, Gwen was very patient with everybody.
Yes.
But it just got to the point where it had to be done. But she's still very patient with everybody.
So some parents might feel like, well, if I start calling, my trans daughter, she and her, and take on a female name, that this potential phase is less likely to pass. If I want this to sort of pass and everything to fit back in the nice tidy box, I shouldn't do any of this stuff. I should continue to not call Gwen Gwen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that passed for you, and just realized this is I don't know if you felt any impressions from God or the doctrine of our church or just to say this is the right thing to do.
Well, the key for me was in this is, regardless of what happens, I am responsible to keep my family together. Whether my children do what I want them to do or they don't, my responsibility is to keep my family together. And that's where it came down to it. And when we see what our actions and our behavior on how we are treating our own child hurt her, and then you can physically see and feel the pain, how can you do anything else but correct yourself? Mm-hmm. You have to correct yourself, because if you're the instigator of your own child's pain, shame on you. You need to stop that, and you need to turn that to love. And whatever she needed, we had to provide. And I know some people don't look at that way in lines with maybe religious views and stuff, but ultimately, she's a child of God, and we're the custodians of her right now. And how we treat her and how we love her, we'll answer for that.
I'm very lucky that like any good kid, I've got a lot of the best and worst traits of my parents in me, but they can be very adamant. If they know something to be true, they'll uphold it, they'll stand firm with it. And I feel like that has probably helped along our journey, the fact that, especially by the time I'd come out to them, that I was pretty sure of myself. I knew that I was trans. I wasn't necessarily happy about it, and I wasn't necessarily coming out wasn't everything you'd want it to be, but the fact that I kept with correcting them, that I stood my ground and kept being myself and made sure to tell my story, be myself, that kind of confidence in seeing me continue to live on and live my life basically showed that it isn't a phase, that because I've lived my own truth, that they can join me on that.
Tiffany, any other thoughts?
I think, as far as, I had always wished that I would have been more accepting right at the beginning. I look back and I was ashamed of some of the things I said or thought or did, and I have to give myself a break on that. But I remember when Gwen was working and I just saw her, and I had really been thinking about that a lot, and I had just come up to her and I said, Gwen, I just want to apologize that I wasn't accepting right at first, like I should have been, that it took me this long to get to where I am now. And she surprised me because she said, it's fine. It's okay. Because you had to go through your own journey to get where you are now. And now I'm one of those, in quotes, those mothers that are just kind of the crazy, I will accept you and love you, and I'll be that mama bear for everybody. And it took me that journey to get to there, and through that journey, I have learned so much, and I have gained the love of this community. I just want to be all their moms now.
It's really cool. I'm just deeply touched by so many things that have just been said. I love that you walked into Pride Center, Lance. And I love that the word you used, ashamed. And some families, parents, would be ashamed of having a LGBTQ child. And I love the spiritual maturity of both of you and your insights into Gwen to say, no, we're not going to do that. And then I love that you I always like making decisions based on principles. And so what you just said, that both of you said, is our job as parents to keep our family together. And I, particularly as a dad, need to keep my children safe. And so I think that is a great framework. That is what my own parents did as one of their children stepped away from the church, not a trans, but it taught me just the importance of the family circle. And it's part of the doctrine of our church, is keep our families together and honor individual agency. And I love that you were so kind, Gwen, as your parents. You had gone through this privately, and then I think you're so kind to your parents, and that story you just shared, Tiffany. And I just love the principle of respect, and it doesn't cost me any. Now, if this were my own child, I know it would take me a while to get here, but it doesn't cost me anything to call someone by the name that they would be preferred. Now, if I have to reprogram my brain, it's going to take a little while. But if I'm meeting someone for the first time, they don't have to go. I don't look at Gwen and sort of, well, you've got to go through a test before I'll call you Gwen. I've got to know you've been transitioning for 4 years and the degree of transition, and I'm going to ask all these questions that are inappropriate. But out of the principle of respect, I would just call you Gwen, and you she and her, and it costs me nothing to do that. And to me, it's just part of the kindness that I've been taught as part of the gospel of Jesus Christ to extend to others. So that's the way I sort of frame it up, as a bystander and not having anybody that's trans in my own life. Yet, who knows?
Yeah.
We'll have someone close in our family. Let's talk. There's so many other places we could go, but I want to talk about Gwen getting married. Would you want to tell us you got married to Trevor?
Yeah. When I was, I guess, around 15, 16, I had known Trevor. We had been in a few classes. I think he moved to Woods Cross in 5th grade. But we had been friends kind of through other friends. And I'd say through the middle of junior high, we kind of became part of a really close friend circle that eventually just ended up just being me and Trevor in the end. But I was really lucky to have him early on, because I was able to be out to him and kind of, I guess, get a practice run with, name and pronouns. So I'm blessed to have him in my life early on. But we had moved out when we were 18. It was, I think, the day after his birthday. We moved up to Weber. We really just, his scenario and my scenario, we just both wanted to get out of the house, do our own thing. And I feel like it was really good that I did that. School was really fun, and able to, having my own agency to start transitioning, taking hormones and getting started. But we pretty quickly moved back into the apartment complex that our family manages. So now I'm nice and close to home. But it was about, I'd say 2-3 years before we ended up actually getting married. Enough people just asking us when we're going to get married, pretty much what convinced us. We had the ceremony on let's see, it was September 2nd. So almost like about a year and a half ago, in 2017.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was way better than I could have imagined. I'm the kind of person I would just imagine having a simple backyard wedding, not doing anything too fancy. And while it wasn't gaudy or anything, we had so many friends and family members there that showed so much love and support. It was beautiful.
It was very intimate and
very,
very supportive and loving. It was really nice. And just for the record, Trevor's our favorite in the family. So
yes, he's a gem.
He is a gem. He is. We'll take him practically over all our kids. So he's
way to go,
loved.
Trevor.
Well, and anywhere we lacked in support, Trevor picked up, and we feel so safe with Trevor as her husband, and has always been such a support to Gwen. And I tease because they're so intellectual. They never fight about normal fight things, but when they were together at first, they would argue about like math equations or
we're nerds, sweet.
But they just have a beautiful, beautiful marriage, and they just get along so well. And he is just so kind and generous, and I just love that kid.
He's very sweet, and I think he fits in with the family pretty well, though.
Yeah, Gwen and Trevor are both quite mathematical nerds. We were on a vacation and with Tiffany's parents, and we all had to pull over one time, and they had to separate those two, and one go in one car and one the other one because they were fighting over math. So that's kind of been of a joke in our family.
That's awesome, Gwen.
Yeah. But luckily, I feel I've been pretty inspired where it's not like you guys have the ideal, pristine, perfect marriage, but I think that's not a perfect marriage. I think if you are just trying to look perfect and anytime anyone sees you, you look like you're the happiest couple around. But I feel, it's more important to be real with each other, be very close friends. We were very close friends. And I feel like you two have a very good friendship that I've learned a lot from.
That's a great tribute to your parents. Talk about, has this experience of having a transgendered daughter caused your marriage to tear apart and struggle, or has it caused you to actually become close together and have a healthier, stronger marriage?
I do think it's helped us have a lot stronger marriage. Through this whole process, it's a roller coaster. It really is. And there's many ups and downs. And we went through that on that roller coaster together. And we had to kind of keep climbing together. But that's the one thing is we always kind of were in the same place emotionally through this whole thing. And even on days that, I was having a struggle or I was upset about something, he would come and pull me out of that. And same with him. There was, a morning in particular that Lance was looking in his closet to get some clothes and kind of had a little mini breakdown. And I was like, what's the matter? And because they come out of nowhere. And he was just like struggling the fact that this child will never wear men's clothing. It was just kind of a strange, but it was at the very beginning, but it was honest. It was just like, like I said, the future that you will see. And, one time I bought a purse and it had her previous name on it. And I, out of nowhere, just burst into tears, because you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know when it will come or what, but every so often you have memories of the past and you do. And it really helped to have him support me and vice versa. We were really there for each other and it did strengthen our marriage a lot, I believe.
I think, there's times like that. I mean, to be honest, people, you're going to have those emotional times. You're going to have those, and you can't always suppress them. If you need to be able to communicate with your spouse so they can help share that with you. If you don't, we have many people that we know that spouses have not seen eye to eye on this, and it's caused divorce and it's caused hardship in families. And I'm grateful to Tiffany that I have her, that we can bounce things off back and forth. And as a dad and as a man, I mean, who do you cry to? You don't cry to very many people.
Right.
And when things like that hit you, it's like sometimes when I will think of my mom who passed away 13 years ago, and it just catches me out of nowhere, and you have that emotional time. And so being able to have a safe place for that, I have learned and understand why those in the LGBTQ community need a safe place, because I needed a safe place for those emotions that I was experiencing. And so it's been very, very helpful that we're on the same page on it. And honestly, for husband and wife, that's one of the biggest advice I can give anyone is, it's hard, but get on the same page, get there together and stay on it, and your family will be blessed for it.
And once you can, especially, that'll bleed over into your family as a whole. And the fact that you've been had an open line of communication with each other, and as we've gotten older, that's spread to all of all of my siblings, our whole family. We're more honest with how we feel. We'll not bottle in things as much, and
That's good.
Communication is key, really.
Yeah.
As you spent time praying along this road, any personal revelation you've received about about this situation, having a trans daughter?
Yes, and this is really where my acceptance came. And I have talked about this before. When she first came out, I struggled. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be the accepting parent, and just jump into that. But I just couldn't. I was struggling so hard. I was upset. I was upset at God. Why was he doing this? This is his child. And why do you give this burden to us? What did we do to deserve it? Kind of thing. And I didn't think it was a trial I could handle. And so I remember just praying to fix it, praying to fix it back, make it all better. And nothing came from that. And finally, I just remembered hearing somebody talk about praying the right way, praying that God will guide you, praying that, he's not going to just take everything away from you and you don't have to go through the trial. But I just prayed, I remember very specifically praying to just help me know what to do, help me be guided. And instantly after I finished my prayer, I got this straightforward answer, calling me by name, Tiffany, you do not have the right to take away their free agency. You just have to love her. And I never once even considered I was doing anything about free agency. As a parent, you just tell your kid what to do, and that's what they should do. But this particular thing, by holding her back and by trying to stop this progression, I was forcing my agency on her. And I wasn't allowing to have her agency, which is a gift from God. And that's why we're here. And even though it seemed against what maybe the church would have you do or thoughts, that was when I was like, I pulled off and I said, okay, if you don't want to go to church, I'll support you in that. If you want to stop going to young men's, I'll support you from that. If you want to pull out of seminary, I'll support you with that. Even though it seems so against what we believed, but what it was doing, it was allowing my child to have her free agency to be the person she needed to be. And that's when the change happened for me. And I knew that I was being guided by God and being told just to love her. And when you just love, it makes everything easier.
Mine happened probably several months after Tiffany had prayed, and I would drive from Woods Cross to South Jordan every morning and to work, and I would drive in the HOV lane, and I would have a lot of arguments with God on the way. A lot of mornings of just tears and just pain. And so one morning I just remember, and I was praying and I was just asking, and all I can describe is I was carried off in a dream. And when I dreamt, I was standing in a big room, and there were chairs at the front, and I could see Christ because of what we think Christ looks like. And then there was also Heavenly Father was sitting in the chair next to him. And I was standing shoulder to shoulder with Gwen, how she looks and how she is. And I couldn't hear anything. And the three of them were having a long conversation.
The three of
Gwen and Heavenly Father and Christ were having a long conversation. And I wasn't able to hear it. I was just standing there. And it went on for a while. And then after it was finished, Christ turned to me and just looked at me and said, I only have one question for you. Did you love unconditionally as I love you? And I remember just answering yes. And he smiled and said, well done. And about that time, I woke up. I had driven from 45th South to 108th South and missed my exit. So I don't remember driving, and I wasn't driving. I was experiencing what I experienced. And I pulled into work, and I sat in the parking lot, and I sat and cried and sobbed for a half an hour before I could get my composure to go into work. And I had my answer. And that was my own personal answer. That wasn't influenced by anything other than my own prayer. And so I received my own personal revelation for my child and how to love and accept my child. And I was fine with it. And I moved forward.
Will you just repeat that line again? The line from Christ to you.
Yeah, he looked at me and said, I only had one question for you. Did you love unconditionally as I love you? And I said, yes.
As I have loved you. Well, I have tears in my eyes again, Lance, and I just love the personal revelation you're receiving and the doctrine that you're following to manage, your family situation. I love that your marriage is closer, your family is closer. I would think if we had your other three children on the podcast at some point, they would talk about, now and in 10 and 20 and 30 years, how their lives are better because they have a transgender sibling. And the things that you've taught them and the things that you have parents have taught your children, I think will bless your family for generations. And so I think this is a beautiful family story that's still in its early chapters. I love where you opened the door that if Gwen felt like she needed to leave the church, that you were going to open. I don't think you opened that door and say, go for it. I think what you said is, if this is what you need to do, I'm going to walk with you. It's not what I'd hoped for.
Right.
I'm just going to leave that at the Savior's feet, because I think it's another part of your story is you have a child, Gwen, that's stepped away from the church.
Yes.
Any more thoughts on just how you're managing that, or advice to other parents as they have children that have stepped away for any reason?
Well, part of it was I knew that when she was at church, she had anger inside of her and she had harsh feelings. And the last thing I wanted for her was to go to church, being there with harsh feelings, and then just having more and more harsh feelings towards the church. That doesn't do anybody any good. And I needed her to be able to follow her own path. And that was a struggle. That was very difficult. But I learned, through my other children, you can't control everything they're going to want to do and how they feel. And it made it a little bit easier with the other kids. I think poor Gwen had to deal with all of that. But I think, I just didn't want to force her to be somewhere she didn't want to be and then just be more angry at the church. I didn't think that would help anybody.
I feel like in some ways it's like putting a square peg through a circle hole, especially when you're going through your teen years in the church. You can't, there's a lot of, separated men's and women's group. And it very much kind of drives in the idea of, that you're a man and that you have the priesthood, and that, that's a lot of what your focus is when you're going to church, or those are your activities. And, I couldn't imagine most trans people wanting to deal with that, be around that environment, just because it can be pretty isolating. And, can cause a lot of dysphoria for sure. And I feel like in leaving the church, it's not necessarily that it's not for me. I feel like in the long run, if I had the faith, especially seeing how my family, their kind of activity, and a lot of other Mormon queer folks that I have met, I just feel like I'm probably a very secular person. I have my head in space and thinking about, numbers and such. But
have you wanted the rest of your family to leave the church to somehow support you? Have you felt like it's okay for them to be in and you to be out?
Initially, I feel like especially after I had turned 18, the time that I had just moved out, there was a lot on the headlines with the church, and there were a lot of stances that the church has taken and a lot of different stances that individual LDS people have taken. Well, I never really, maybe early on and just around when I came out and earlier, I would have, I wouldn't have cared if they left the church or not. I wasn't planning on keeping them in my lives. But as, I've realized that I want and need them in my lives.
It sounds like you went through a stage where you kind of, maybe wanted your family to leave to support you, but it sounds like you're in a stage now where you found your path and your family's staying in the church, and you're just you're keeping the family circle together with the differences that exist, and not necessarily trying to pull each other into one direction, just honoring where everybody is. Is that fair, Gwen?
Yeah, and I feel like everyone has the right to, have their own faith and practice as they want. And honestly, I've been maybe not drawn back into the circle, but I am inspired to see how much more of a progressive space the church can be when people like my parents, going out of their way, speaking with their bishops, speaking with their stake leaders to make their church and help make their communities more LGBT inclusive. So, while it might not be something I practice, it's a lot more of a space I feel comfortable in.
That's good.
I've been blown away to see so many of the Ward family, so many people I've grown up with that, add me on Facebook, like and share everything I post, send me the kindest, most loving messages. So I feel like while I might not be active, I'm not really out of the Ward family that much.
Cool.
So
in this last segment, let's talk about your journey, because it became increasingly more difficult in the church. And I don't know if this is true, maybe wondered if you had one step in, one step out, and this was really going to work for you as deeply committed Latter-day Saints. And I think you went through that stage, and I think you're in a stage where both feet are back in, but part of that is the reaction and the support of your local leaders. I think for a lot of families with LGBTQ kids, what their leaders do or don't do can make all the difference in this space. And I think a lot of leaders want to do the right thing, but don't know what to do. And I think, and then you could maybe transition into just your relationship with your local leaders and what you're doing in your ward and stake.
Yes, I think it's important to understand that when your child comes out, you have a big struggle of how your membership in the church and being able to love and accept your child, how that meshes. And as many of my ward members could testify, there was a very long time that I would sit in church and out of nowhere just burst into tears. You might have a lesson about your child and raising your child in faith and righteousness or something like that, and you just felt like a failure. What did I do wrong? And so you just sit there, and it's very difficult. And I think more than not, that's what parents feel when they want to stay in the church. My testimony really never was shaken, but my ability to want to be there, my wanting to sit through that, feeling like I had some kind of spotlight on me, that I did something wrong or I wasn't doing right. And so it really does affect your testimony in a way, as far as when you don't want to be there and you have harsh feelings and you feel like people are judging you, it really does break you down. And it kept getting worse. It kept getting worse. And I think the same thing with Lance. We both kind of just were struggling with church policy, struggling about being kind and loving and making all that work out. And we just really got into a dark place recently. And this wasn't too far away. We kept staying in the church and, we'd go up and down on how we'd feel, but just could not get to a place to work those two things out.
Yeah, there just got to a point where when things would just affect us. And I remember sitting in sacrament meeting and we were singing one of the songs, and I don't remember which one it was, but I was reading the words and it hit me so strong. I just burst into tears and I got angry, and I just stood up and walked out and walked home, went home. And Tiffany has done that in lessons too before, because it affects you so badly that we just got in a dark place. And as of last year, and we were still fulfilling our callings, we're family history consultants, and I love that. I mean, family history is wonderful. And
I think you both have temple recommends.
Yeah, yes. We do.
We always had.
And, but it just got to that point where it was just too much, and it was too hard and everything. And I got to the point where we had talked and we thought, well, maybe we just need a break for us. And I had just said, but I can't, we still have our callings and stuff, but we just couldn't do it. And I messaged my bishop, and I just explained, told him what we were feeling, and it'd probably be best if he released us and we were going to probably take a break and step back and reevaluate things. And he immediately called me.
He called you.
He immediately called me, and he told me, I want to let you know I'm not going to try to talk you off the ledge. I just want to listen. And our bishop is a wonderful man, and we've known him for a while, and a very sincere heart, and he just let me tell him what I was feeling and what we were feeling. And he goes, I'm not going to try to tell you one way or another. But he said, have you talked to the stake president about this? And I said, no, I have not. And, just within talking, I just realized, you know what? I need to give the stake president a chance to listen and to see what he says. So I said, yeah, you know what? I'd like to talk to the stake president. I go, but on one condition. I said, if me and Tiffany talk with him, I want you there also. And he said, sure. So we set up that meeting. And it was just that week.
So it's Tiffany, it's the two of you, your bishop and your stake president. You're kind of one foot in, one foot out. This is real critical.
This was July of 2018. And
this could go either way.
This could go either way.
And we were going to be honest. We were going to tell how we felt, and it wasn't going to be pretty. And we didn't know how it would be when we walked out those doors. But they both sat there and they listened to everything we had to say. And like I said, sometimes it wasn't pretty, and sometimes I burst into tears, and I told exactly how I felt about everything. And they just listened. And our sweet bishop was, he was crying with us.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we have the best word. Everyone says that, but we truly have the kindest, most accepting word I have ever seen. And I think if we didn't, and we didn't have the support of our bishop the way we have, I don't know where we'd be right now, honestly. I would hope where we are, but I can't promise that, because I have seen other bishops or other leaders and other members, reject people or make them feel like they don't belong. And we have never ever had that happen to us in our ward. We have wonderful, wonderful ward. And with the support of our bishop and then our stake president listening to our story, they had never really come across a situation like ours, but they were willing to listen to us, and great things came from that. Yeah,
that's one of the interesting things is we were having this discussion, and we were an hour and a half into the discussion, and we were honest. I mean, it was pretty brutal, and they took it. And it's very interesting because I just started to notice a change with our stake president, and he was not anything negative. We were just having a discussion, but I noticed a change in his eyes, and then he turned and talked to the bishop. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "What?" I don't know what it was. We were looking. I saw his countenance. We saw his countenance change before us. It was like the heavens opened up and he got it.
Wow.
And he turned back to us and he said, "I've been thinking about this, and I believe that I'm receiving inspiration on how to help you." He goes, "I think I know how to help you." And we had never heard that before from a church leader, ever. He thought he knew how to help us, and we were all ears. And he said, "What I'd like you to do is come," it was in the next month, "and come and all the bishops meet." He wanted us to come and share our story and share our feelings with all the bishops in the stake. And he wanted us to bring material and literature and information that can help the bishops. He said, "I want you to help me train the bishops the way you needed one when all this happened."
The way you needed one when all this happened.
Yeah. And we were like, yes,
Stunned.
yes. And our bishop was in tears, and he said, "I would like to ask you and Tiffany if you will teach the September 30th, the 5th Sunday lesson on loving and accepting our LGBTQ members." And we were like, "Yes, we will. Absolutely." And I can tell you the spirit in the room was so strong that we knew that it was what was supposed to happen. We walked out of that meeting going, "What just happened? What did we sign up for? And what happened?" But I looked at it as I was playing a hand of cards with Christ. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but he was putting down all these cards of, here's the answer to this prayer, here's the answer to this prayer, and 7 years of prayers. I just needed to pick them up. And we scooped them up and picked them up because they put them on the table for us. And so we left there, and we didn't know what we were doing, but it was amazing. And it only grew from there, because a week later we were talking, and my stake president talked to me again, and he asked us if we would be willing to come and do the same that we were going to do for the bishops, and talk with the High Council and the stake auxiliary presidents. And we said, absolutely. So Tiffany's about freaking out about that time, but so he asked us to do this and prepare. And so we had done that, and we were preparing for the bishops, and we noticed that stake conference wasn't on the calendar for the stake calendar. And so Tiffany said, well, when you talk to him again, ask him when stake conference is. So he told me that he said that, we were changing stake conference. And by the way, you and Tiffany will be speaking in the adult session of stake conference on loving and accepting our LGBTQ members and family. And I was like, okay. And they put forth this wonderful opportunity for us and for those that were there to hear.
And it was very intimidating walking in to a big boardroom with every leader in the stake. But they really listened to us. They let us tell our stories. And we met back a couple times, the next couple months, because the stake president put a call out to them and said, go and you figure out how you're going to implement this in your auxiliary. And it was amazing from that first meeting to the following meetings, the countenance of so many of them changed. And some would just break down and said, I thought that I wasn't a judgmental person. I thought that, but I realized through this, I had a long way to go. And we saw these men just break down. And there was a beautiful woman there that came, and when we walked out of that auxiliary meeting, she just said, can I give you a hug? And she gave me the biggest hug, and she just started weeping. And she said, I wish I would have heard this sooner, because she had a neighbor who had a transgender child that took their life.
Wow.
And she had always felt guilty that she hadn't done something, said something And she said, what can I do? And I said, don't put that on yourself, but what you can do is move forward and you be there for that family. And you go up to that family and tell them that you love them. And when you're given an opportunity in the future to show that love, now you know. When you know better, you do better. And you could just tell how much that touched her. And just knowing that spirit, it wasn't us, it was the Lord touching their hearts. And it was beautiful.
And we've had really a wonderful opportunity. I mean, when we it was interesting with the fifth Sunday, we went home and I dreamt how that was to happen that night. And when we woke up the next morning, I was talking and Tiffany said, "This isn't going to work." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "There's just not enough time. We can't get all this in a fifth Sunday lesson." She goes, "We need to have both hours. You need to tell them we need to have both hours, 2 hours." And I was like, I agree. So we talked to the bishop and I just explained it to him that we would do it. I said, on one condition. And he said, what? And I said, I already know how this is going to work. And he said, how? And I said, well, you're going to stand up and introduce and welcome everybody. I said, but we're not going to talk about it beforehand. And I don't want anybody to know what the subject is because I want all the people that could come be there. And he said, okay. And I said, you'll introduce President Lingard, and President Lingard will then introduce why we're here. And he said, okay. And I said, then Tiffany is going to speak. And I said, we've asked Allison Doyson, that you're familiar with. We asked Allison if she would come and speak, and she agreed. We'd have her, and then we had another...
and George.
And George both speak. And we asked one of our ward members, who's just a wonderful woman, that we asked her if she would speak also. And she is their teacher of the 16 to 18-year-old.
It's just there for him.
It's just there for him. She's just a wonderful ally. We asked her. And we also asked Kent Carollo to come and speak. And he spoke, and then I finished the speaking. And then our bishop, we asked him to close it with his blessing. And he talked to the stake president, and everybody agreed. So that's where we were. And we had a wonderful fifth Sunday. And it was full. We had probably 250 people there.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
They also allowed the youth 14 and up to come.
Wow.
Yep. The bishop had all the youth 14 and up come. And a lot of people that we had talked to, invited in the LGBTQ community, personally, they come and then they invited other people. And so there was a lot of people there. A lot of people there to support and listen, because a lot of people have never heard of a bishop or a stake president allowing that kind of communication, other than the Augustines, that I think for me, them and us, we're the only ones that I've ever even heard that have pulled this off and done that. And it was very wonderful, and it was so emotional because we had so many people come up to us after and just thank us because they needed to hear that. So it was a wonderful experience.
Yes.
I definitely could see. Oh, sorry. I definitely could see a change where, from that point where you had talked with your bishop and stake leadership, that you were very much on the fence, worried before, and I really did appreciate that you made it clear to me that you were going to stay by your side and that you were going to hold firm and stay with your family, but especially after those events, when you had told me that no matter what, you're going to be that annoying person that if you're pushing it too far, you're going to be in church, but you're also going to be that all the way out, very active ally. And everyone's going to have to be okay with that, because you're going to be, you both are adamant about, holding on to your faith and also supporting and loving me. And we wanted to be an example of that you can accept and love your LGBT child, but you can still maintain your testimony and come to church and
and it doesn't have to be one or the other.
I love that. And to me, that you use an and word versus a but.
Right.
You can do both. And I think most Latter-day Saints want to do both. They just haven't know how to do it. So I think that's why people respond to your training, because it resonates with them. We have this doctrine that's called mourn, comfort, and bear. It's part of our baptism covenants. And to sort of do that, you've got to know the nature of someone's cross. And so if I go back to your bishop and stake president, that initial meeting, they're sensing the cross that you bear.
Yes.
It's becoming clear to them. And then they have personal revelation, inspiration on how to bear, mourn, and comfort you, and also how to bless the whole stake. And it seems like this can be scaled. It's, and I think that's one of the things that I'm excited about this podcast is I think a lot of local leaders and families want to do what you've done and your stake has done. We're kind of coming to the end, but Lance and Tiffany, as you've been working with your local leaders, sometimes this question, I think it's question 7 of the Temple Recommend, do you affiliate or agree with any group or individual whose teachings or practices are contrary to those accepted by the church? I'm paraphrasing. And that becomes really complicated for some members. Any thoughts on just how you're dealing with that in your own situation, or how your stake is dealing with that?
Yeah, we were when we met with the High Councilman, and that was a question that was brought up. And I said I could explain that, and I said that the answer to that question was yes. You can answer yes to that question and still have a temple recommend, because I was proof. But then I explained that our counselor in the stake presidency, who used to be our bishop, when I went in for my interview, I answered yes to that question. And
the typical answer is no.
Yes, typical answer is
no. So you're answering
no.
it kind of differently.
Exactly. And basically, if you're not, then no, and you move on. But when I said yes, he said, okay, well, let's talk about it. That's great. It provides us an opportunity to have a discussion. And I said, great. So I just explained what I thought I was doing, and by supporting my child, and we had volunteered at Pride. We'd went to the Pride Festival. We'd helped people. We donated money, and we'd done some different things. And so answering that question was yes to me, because that's what I thought I was doing. And we had a really wonderful discussion, and he just explained to me that he knew me, and he knew that we weren't antagonistic towards the church, and we weren't promoting literature or writing things or trying to pull anybody away from the church, and we weren't trying to be, speak of the church derogatory in a way. And so it was a really wonderful experience, because we came to the realization that I could answer no to that question. My things I was doing really wasn't. And further, when we had worked with our stake president, he actually gave, after our stake conference, he gave a talk about that, and he just kind of explained the same thing for everyone in the stake. And his point was basically is, if it becomes militant in the sense of your intentions, it's how your intentions are trying to harm or discredit the church and pull people away. And it was just the way he explained it. It came from his heart, and it was a wonderful explanation. And we noticed a lot of people that were nodding their head and understanding that they've never had that question explained to them that way.
I like that. And I'm reading here from a Q&A that Elder Christofferson had with the local media. I believe it was the Tribune. And the question was asked by the reporter, what about Mormons? And I guess that would be asked, what about Latter-day Saints now, who support same-sex marriage privately among family and friends, or publicly by posting entries on Facebook, marching in pride parades, or belonging to gay-friendly organizations such as Affirmation or Mormons Building Bridges? Can they do so without losing their church membership or temple privilege? Elder Christofferson said, quote, we have individual members of the church with a variety of different opinions, beliefs, and positions on these issues and other issues. In our view, it really doesn't become a problem unless someone is out attacking the church and its leaders, and if it's a deliberate and persistent effort to try to get others to follow them, trying to draw others away, pulling people, if you will, out of the church or away from its teachings and doctrines. So I love that question, and I think I'd encourage most people to answer no to that question. I like the way you answered yes because you knew you trusted your leader can have a thoughtful question. Some people may not have that relationship, and it may get complicated.
Yeah.
And so, but I love the way your stake went with that, because to me, it's not if we're just ministering and supporting people and just honoring people's past, that's not inconsistent with what Christ did. I look at Christ and what he did in context of this question, and he was with people that were not in the fold and ministering to them and supporting them in individual journeys. So I think your life experience is a great example of how that's done. So thank you for sharing that. So we're at the end. We could do another podcast because this is such a great discussion, but I'd love to just have Gwen, maybe each of you share some final comments. Gwen, why don't you share some final comments? And I know you've got put together a name change guide.
Yeah.
And you could tell our listeners how to find that.
Yeah, definitely. Back a couple years ago, I had gone through and legally changed my name, as a lot of trans people do. But something that, especially going through the process, I learned that it can be really complicated, and a lot of trans people won't go down that path just because it can be very intimidating. And while it might not seem like it at first, Utah, out of all of the states, is actually not too difficult to change your name in. It can be complicated, and there's some very important things to keep note of along the way. So luckily I found online through scrapping together a few resources, and I think about 7-year-old comment someone left on a thread is what I use for most of my preparation for the court date. But I spent a lot of time, and all the resources that I had to put together for my transition, I figured I'd put them together, kind of explain my experience. I've put it together on this website. You could visit it at utnamechange.com. It's very much a combination of a walkthrough of how to fill out any legal forms, how to find the resources that you'll need in preparation and for your court date, and also updating, once you've gotten that court order, you're only halfway done. You have to get that information out to your birth certificate, your social security, your, anywhere you have business with, loans, companies. So hopefully my experience can help other people. It's very specific for Utah. There are quite a few states that have very similar laws and might work for, but if you notice, it is actively growing. Anything I see that does change over time and over the last few years, there are things that have updated in Utah law that...
How old do you need to be to have your name changed?
You'll need to be 18 as far as the current law is. And the most common requirement that you're going to be looking for is making sure that you have a doctor's letter, which in Utah typically requires what said a year of being out, a year of presenting. Usually your doctor, once you've been on hormones or have met with them for around 6 months to a year, they'll give you that letter that you need. And then it's really just tracking down every little bit of information, any legal document that has your name or gender somewhere, which there is a lot, getting a hold of all of those to get them changed. So that's utnamechange.com. Yes.
Thank you, Gwen. Any other thoughts you'd like to share about your parents, your family, or anything else? Closing thoughts from you?
I'd like to say, coming out to my family was something that was initially very difficult, but the more open we've been with each other, the further we've gone on this journey, the closer it's brought us. And it's done wonders for our family, and I think it's also done wonders for the community around us. And I don't think we would have been able to have this experience if we weren't, together, if we didn't share love and we didn't, make sure to stay close, share that love.
Thank you, Gwen.
You're
Tiffany, any thoughts, closing thoughts for our listeners?
I think the closing thought that I would have is if your child comes out to you, it is a scary time, but just know, just love your child, just help your child. Maybe move on to Lance.
All right. That's good. We can bounce back and forth. And his closing thoughts. That's just fine.
I would say for me is what message I want people to know is that you can have an LGBTQ child, nephew, niece, aunt, uncle, brother, friend, anyone. And you can love them, respect them, and you can have as strong as faith as you want in the gospel. You can be a temple recommend holder. You can do everything you want to in the church and still be loving and supporting of them. It does not conflict. I think we've been programmed just in society that you can't have both. But we are a family that have got to the point where we figured out how it works. And that is through prayer, and that is through personal revelation, that we have kept our family together. And we know how to be strong in the church and be loving of the LGBT community and supportive. And you can do it. And seems at first that it'll never can happen, we're living proof that to other people and families that you can do it, and you can do it in harmony with gospel principles.
How do people, will you give your email out, Lance, in case people want to talk to you?
Sure. My email is ltsweeten@yahoo.com.
Okay.
And we are very open to talking to other parents, other trans parents, just helping them to reassure them, somebody did that for us. And for us to pay it forward is just to have somebody to talk to and just vent or share their experience. And if we can help, everybody has to go through this journey. You can't take out any piece of the journey. You can't, but you can shorten the journey. You can shorten the journey due to loving people that are surrounding you, education, and actually just knowing resources, knowing who to go to and where to go to and what to talk to. And if we can help people take a journey that we've been on for 7 years and cut that down at all for them and cut their pain and help them keep their families together and understand you can do it, then, that's wonderful. That's what we want to do.
Tiffany.
Well, I remembered what I wanted to say. I will say, this is how I feel. I feel like the journey we went on was probably the biggest trial we've ever been on. But it truly is the biggest blessing that we've ever got from it. And once we accepted Gwen, we wanted to go further. And now the work we're doing is not even just about Gwen. It's about all LGBTQ youth, adults, and parents out there that once you come over that hurdle and you get into this community, there is so much love in it. And for some reason, when I'm around this community, I just want to go and love and hug every one of them. And it has brought the Spirit into my life so much. I get so nervous to talk about most anything. Saying a prayer and sacrament scares me to death. But when it comes to this, I'm very passionate about it, and the fear goes away. And I'll just tell you that there is nothing that has blessed my life more. And these people are just the most loving, kind, generous people, and just a blessing in my life.
Do you have an email address, Tiffany, you'd share with our listeners?
It is Tiff Sweeten, so TIFFSWEETEN @yahoo.com.
Okay. We'll put those in our post too.
And
Gwen.
if it's all right for me to add, the guide online is available for download in a convenient form if you need to take it with. But of course, if you have any questions on the guide or just need assistance with it, with your own process, I am more than happy to help. On the website, there's a link for my email, or you can get in contact at utnamechange@gewn.me, GEWN.me.
Not
Correct.
GWEN.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a username.
Will you
I
give
use
that
for
one
some
more
other
time, how people contact you?
Yeah. So if you have any questions on your name change or just need support in that way at all, utnamechange@gewn.me.
Okay. Lance, Tiffany, Gwen, thank you for joining us and sharing your story. There's been a wonderful spirit here. I have learned a lot. I have been edified and supported, and you have a wonderful future. And I would love to have you on the podcast in 5 years and 10 years, and you would continue to tell what the blessings of your wonderful family and your wonderful life journey are for you and so many others. Thank you, our listeners, for joining us on another episode of Listen, Learn, and Love, hosted by Richard Osler.